Alright, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this tutorial, I'll be demonstrating how to use the SQLite library by building a simple notes app. We'll be building a notes app like this. So first thing first, we'll create a brand new Flutter project. So press Ctrl Shift P and you see Flutter new project. If you don't see it, just type new project and you should see it come up with Flutter. Click application in a folder. I'm going to name it Sqflite YT. Now that the boilerplate code has been generated, what I'll go ahead and do is run this up. Now that the app has run, what I'll go ahead and do is remove the unnecessary code that we'll need. So the home page will create our own screens. So remove these. And we have an error here. Just simply replace it with a scaffold widget for the moment. And we'll also change the theme of this app. First thing first, let's remove this unnecessary comments. Now remove the theme. I'll use theme data dark. Okay. Also, let's remove that debug banner. Set it to false. Okay. What we're going to do now is get the packages that we need, namely Sqflite package and the part package. Go over to installing, copy this command, paste it in your terminal. We'll also need the part package. Copy the command, update to your terminal. Oh, that wasn't copy good, so let me type it. So we have gotten all our necessary dependencies. So now that we have done that, let's create the home screen. Create a stateful widget. Call it home screen. And for the home screen, what I'll be doing for the time being is add the up bar, my notes, and the floating action button. A scaffold, up bar, give it a title, give it a text widget, call it my notes. Okay, so before we proceed any further, what we'll do to see this on the screen is that we were using a scaffold as a placeholder. So just simple replace that with the home screen. And there it is, my notes. Now that we have let's add the floating action button. So floating action button. And to need an unpress function. For the time being, we'll set it to an empty function, and it also needs a child And for the child, we'll just simply add an icon, a plus icon. So cons icon icons dot add, and there we go. So what I would like to do now is create the Sqflite database and its necessary function, such as adding items, adding nodes to the database, deleting nodes from the database, updating nodes, the basic CRUD operations. Database handler dart. Okay, I'll name this class database handler. Okay, and what we'd like to start off by doing is that we'll declare a private variable called db, which basically means database, which will all reference to the Sqflite database. We will have to make it nullable at start because currently we wouldn't have access to the database, so obviously it would be null by default. So static, so that we can access it from anywhere. The type will be database, and the name will be db. We'll create a getter function called db to get the database, and we'll create a getter function called db to get the database, and it will be done asynchronously because we have to wait until the database is initialized and everything. So future will be getting it from the future database get. This is a keyword for getter functions, and the name of the function is db, and it has to be asynchronous. And however, the first thing that we'll have to do is that we'll have to check if the database has been created before. So if db is not null, we'd like to return that database, right? Else, if the database has not yet been created, what we'd like to do is initialize that database. So db would have been equal to init database, and what we're doing here is that we're just creating a function that will initialize the database. So let's create this function also from the future. Init database. So the first thing that we'll have to do is that we'll have to use the path package to get access to the file directory on the user device to store the user information. So final path is equal to a get database path. Okay. Now that we have gotten a path, what we'll do is that we'll create a database path, and we'll do this by taking the path that we get from get database path and concatenating it with the name of our database. So that would be where we store our files. So final db path is equal to join path, and we'll call it nodes.db. So whatever path we get, it will be that path, and then the file nodes.db. That's where we will store our information. the open, so final db is equal to await open database. And the first thing that OpenDB needs is that it will need to know where on the user device will be storing the information, and we have already gotten that from dbpath, right? And we'll also need to specify the version. Let's just say 1, and it takes an callback function called onCreate, and we'll just pass our own onCreate function. So onCreate, we'll create this function in a bit, and after all of this has been done, what we'll like to do is just return the database, right? But let's create the onCreate function. So future void, we won't be returning anything, and create database db int version, and this of course will be async as well. And what we're basically doing is creating the function. So await db, we have to wait until the database has been created. So await execute, and to create a table, what we say is create all capital letters table, all capital letters, and we'll name this database notes, right? And we put the bracket since it's a function, and what we'll do is that we're going to specify the columns, and the first column that we'd like to add is the ID column, and it will be an integer, all capital letters as well. It will be a primary key, and we'll also like this to auto increment. And our next property would have been title. So title will be of type text, and it should not be null. We'll also have to add this description column, and it's the same as title, so we'll make sure it's of type text and that it cannot be null. Okay, and we had forgot to return the db after it has been initialized, so let's just add that now. So now that we have created and initialized the database, we have accounted for if the database has been created already or not. So we'll now proceed to create the insert method. This is how we'll allow the user to enter data into the database, right? So future, and would like the notes that the user is entering to be of a specific data type. So would like them to enter data of type notes model, right? Call it insert, and of course we'll expect them to enter notes. So before we proceed any further, let's create that model to represent nodes. So it's model.dart, create the class nodes model, right? Class should be lowercase, and we would like to have 3 properties for each node. Each node should have an ID, which will be unique. This ID will come from the Sqflite library, so and it can be nullable at start, so ID should be after. So we'll add a title of type string, a description of type string. Okay, we'll now create a constructor so we can get different instances of the class. So nodes model this dot id required this dot title required this dot description. And we'll need two methods. So we'll need a method to convert input data from the user to the type that the database can handle, and that would have been like tomap. So when a user creates a nodes, it would be an instance of the nodes model, right? Database won't understand that, so we'll have to parse it and basically convert it to a map, basically key value pair. So map string, because we're returning a map, basically a key value pair, and the keys will be string. As it regards to the values, they will be dynamic, since we won't be sure as to what those values will be from the user end. So to map, and we'll return ID to be equal to the ID above, title, and description. Alright, that's done. And we'll create the opposite of the to map, and that is from map, and that is when we're getting the database from the database, we'd like to be able to access specific properties without guessing, and to do so we'll create a to map function, right? So factory nodes model dot from map, and we'll be getting the database, and we'll be getting this information in type map string dynamic, right? And we'll call this results, and we'll return nodes model title will be equal to results title. The description will be equal to results description, and we're forgetting the ID. The ID will be results ID, right? And that's it as it regards to the nodes model. So we'll get back to the database handler, and we'll finish creating our insert method. So let's import this method name insert. So what I'll do first thing is we'll retrieve an instance of the database. So final db client is equal to await db, and this function should be asynchronous. It will take a time to insert the data, so please make it async. And now that we have gotten the instance of the database, we can now insert the database. We can now insert the nodes into the database. So await db client dot insert, and we'll insert it into the table called notes, right? And we'll take that note and convert it to map. Okay, that's why we had created the toMap method in the notes model, right? Correct that, and we'll return the note. Whatever note the user had entered, we'll return the note. Now that the user has entered a note, what we'd like to do is that we'd like to get all those notes that the user has created, right? So future will get a list of notes model, right? We call it get notes list, right? To be async as well. And once again, we retrieve an instance of the database and we'll query and get all of these nodes and store it in a list of type map string dynamic. So final list should be map string dynamic, and we'll call this list query results. And to get all the nodes from the library, what we say is db client dot query, and basically what we're saying, give us everything that's in the nodes table, right? We want everything. And the thing now is that we have gotten the information, yes, but we have gotten in the data in the type map string dynamic. We had planned on returning a list of nodes model, so we'll now have to map over all the nodes in the query list, and let's map over all of these items and store it in a variable called nodes list. So list nodes model, call it nodes list, it's equal to query result. So we take the query result, we'll map over it, and for each node we'll take a node and return a nodes model. So nodes model dot from up, and we'll convert that to a list. Okay, and now that we have gotten all these nodes in the format that we desire, we can just return it. So return node set, and we don't just want to return the node list, would like to reverse it so that we get items in the most recent order. So the last item that the users enter would come out on top. Okay, we'll now create a delete function. So future int, and it's of type int because what we'll be doing is that in order to delete the correct item, right, we'll need the user to give us the ID. So whenever the user is deleting something, we need the ID property. This is how we identify and say, hey, this node is what we want to delete. Okay, delete int ID should make it async. Once again, instantiate the database. We could have created a global variable and do this instead of always instantiating the variable, but it's just for a method, so no big deal. So db client will return. So return await db client dot delete, and we'll look into the notes table where id is equal to id. And what this line is saying is that we're waiting on the id. It's like a placeholder for the id, and now we're passing this id to the id property that the users enter, right? And we'll create an update function to be very similar to the delete function. So future int, call it update. We'll take a notes module, so we'll be waiting for the user to enter a new note, right? Of course it will be async, and we have seen this quite a few times now. And we'll return db client that update typo. Alright, so once again we look through the notes table, right, and we'll convert the node that we're getting to map, and we're replacing the current id. So basically what is going on here is that the user enters a new note, right? So basically what is going on here is that the user enters a new note, will find the existing note, and will replace it with the new note. And basically how the Sqflite work is that whenever we have repeating IDs, what they will do is just simply replace the old data. So whatever new data comes in will just replace the old one. And that's it for our database handler. We have create, read, update, and delete function. So now that we have completed our database method, I would like to go back to our home screen, and the first thing that I would like to do is create a database instance of the database handler. So final database handler db handler is equal to database handler, right? Now that we have added, now with this variable db handler, we'll have access to all the methods in the database handler, right? So we'll be able to create, read, update, and basic CRUD operation that we have just created, right? Now we'll create a variable called nodes list for storing all nodes that are entered. So a little bit late because initially it could be null, so late. It will be a list of nodes model. Insert list model, import, and we'll create an init state, right? What we'd like to happen immediately as the app runs. So as the app runs, we'd like to load all these nodes. So we'll create a function called load nodes. Okay, so let's create this function called load nodes, and it will be from the future because what we'll be doing is querying from the database, and of course this may take some time. So load notes. This will be async. Notes list is equal to db handler that get notes list. So now that we have created what we'd like to happen every time the app runs, so basically whenever the app launches, we'd like to query the database, see if we have already notes there. Okay, so now that we have that done, we'd like to implement what would happen when we click this button. So when we click this button, what I'd like to happen is that we get a pop-up, basically a dialog box, where we can enter the title of our node or a description of the node, a button to submit this node, and perhaps we could add a cancel button just in case we don't bother want to add a notes, just for argument's sake. But for now, let's add a function called add notes. So we won't create the function here, so just reference it. Okay, add note. So we'll create the function add note up here. So note up here. So to be future void add note async, and the first thing I would like to do is add some text editing control. Basically, these are what we'd like to use to update the state as we type our input on the text field, right? So final name controller is equal. Okay, text editing control. Okay. Final description control is equal to text editing control. Okay, so we would like to now create a dialog box, right? But we don't just want to create a dialog box. What we would like to do is that based on whether the user had successfully added the node to the database, we'd like to get that result. So final result is equal to await show dialog. Until we have type bool, whether it's we had added the data correctly or not, successfully or not. And the show dialog takes a context, which will be the context of this screen. So builder, and we'll create that. And what we'd like to do is return a custom component called build node dialog. Right. Well, our dialog will need to have a title. Our dialog will have, the thing is that our dialog will have a title, and the thing is, the reason why we're doing this is because we'll be using the same dialog for the update function, right? So this one will be add notes. We'll have the same name controllers, of course, because both will be having the ability to add a title and a description. So name controller, this should be a colon, description controller is equal to description controller, and would like to have an unpressed function, right? So await db handler dot insert, right? We'll insert the notes model. It should have a title, and the title would be the name controller dot text. So we'll like to retrieve the text from that controller, and for the description it will be the description controller dot text. And after we would have inserted some data, we would have to call the load nodes data function again. So load nodes, and would like to remove this dialog box. So after everything is completed, would like to remove the dialog from the screen. So navigator dot pop context and these are at the wrong place, so this should happen immediately after I inserted the data, right? And it's saying that the build node dialog method isn't created, so what we'll do is that we'll go ahead and create this build node dialog, right? So widget build node dialog. It's a widget because we're returning a widget. So we'd like to get the string, so required string title. So I'd like them to enter the description, the title, as in the title of the node. This title here is for us to know whether we're adding the nodes or we're updating the nodes. So for adding the title, it will be a text editing controller, right? Name controller. We also need one for the description, so text editing controller description controller. Okay, and we also need a function, so required function, we'll call it unpressed. Okay, and what we would like to do is return a alert dialog box, and it will have the title. So the title will be of text, and the title that we had passed, which in this case, well, it will be add node in this case. Oh shoot, we're actually in action, so remove that. So title text title, let's just add our semicolon from now since we're returning. So we would have our title, and we should see that title if we press this. So this is our title at the moment, so it's add node, since that's what we pass whenever we tap the floating action button. It will call the add node function, and the add node function will return a build node dialog, and the build node dialog is this thing here, and we're returning an alert dialog in here, right? Now this dialog box will need content, right? And for this content we'll return a column, because we'd like to add a text field so the user can enter the title of the node, the description of the node, 2 buttons. So we'd like to have 2 buttons, one name cancel, one name add, so that we can cancel and add node, right? So The first thing is that we don't want it to be unnecessarily taking up space, right? So what we'll do is that on the column we have a property called main axis size, right? And we'll set it to min. So main axis size, that min. And what this does is that it makes it takes up the minimum space possible. So if it don't need to be taking up extra space, it won't, right? So now we'll add the children. And the first children that I would like to add is a text field, right? Text form field. We'll add the controller. So we'd like to connect the controller, so the name controller. We'll like to add decoration, input decoration. So to add decoration, we have to use this widget called input decoration, and all that we'd like to add to this input decoration is a label text, right? And this label text will just simply say name of the node, right? And there it is. And we'll do the same thing for description. So text form field, remove that, and we'll add our controller. So connect the controller. So description controller, we'll add decoration, of course, input decoration. We'll add our label text. Our label text will be description. Okay. This silly error. And the reason is that is that we have a text form field instead of a text form field. My bad. So now that we have added that, what we'd like to do is that alert has a property called action, and on this action we can add icons, we can add buttons, and we would like to add buttons because that's what we'd like to use. So options, right? And we'll have a list of options. Where is it? Let me see. This is content. We're still in the wrong place. So look for column, and we're in the alert dialog box. So after this column, so to make it easier, let's drop that. So we know that it's title, then content, then options, right? And what we like to do is add an elevated button. Let's give it an empty function for the time being. I'll just add a child of text, cancel, and we'd like to add a style, text style. It should be colors dot white. Okay, and we'll add another button. So elevated button. Once again, set it to nothing for the time being. Should have a text widget as well. And it should be have a text widget as well, and it should be others of a string of odd. And funny enough, we never needed to add the color white, but whatever. We'd like to style this button, so to style this button, we'll go about that. We just add the style property and we say elevated button that style from, and the first thing we like to add is a background color, right? We'll use colors that red accent for canceling the button. We like to change the size of the button, so minimum size, and we'd like to set the width to about 100, and we have a minimum height of 40, right? And we'll do the same thing for the add button, so we'll say style elevated button that style from, and background colors. I could leave it at blue, but let's go for green accent. No, let's go for the green accent. We'll leave it in blue, so we won't add a background color. We'll just add a minimum size, a size widget, and we'll add it same width of 100 and a height of 40. Now I do not like how these buttons are to the edge, so what I'll do is add a property called action alignment. This is responsible for the layout of the alignment actions, so I'll say main axis alignment dot center, and it should center these two buttons, right? And that's how I like to have it for the moment. So what I'll do now is just simple add the necessary functionalities to these buttons. So the first button would have been the cancel button, right? And when I press cancel, all we would like to do is just take off the dialog box, right? So navigator dot pop context, right? So we press cancel and it just comes out, right? Now as it regards to the add function, unpress function, we'll just simply pass the function that would have been coming from the unpress function, and that is simple to add the title and the description. That is basically to insert a note into the database. As you can see, we're saying the database that insert, and we're adding this note, right? So simple pass that function, and we had named this function unpress. So let's add the unpress function, and we should let's add the unpressed function, and we should be able to add notes now. You won't see them when we add them, but they will be there in the database. Add, right? Now also when we click the add button, what I would like to happen is that if the note has been successfully added, right? If the note has been successfully opened, I would like to show a snap bar that says note was added successfully, right? So if result, remember we were waiting on the results from the show dialog to know whether or not things went well or not. So if result is equal to true, that is if things went well, we'll say scaffold messenger of context dot show snap bar will add a content of text that says added successfully, right? So let's try that again. Let's just say exercise, do 10 laps. Right, note was added successfully. Now in order to see this, now in order to see the notes being displayed here, right, like they're being shown here, we would have to add the body, right? So all of that information is in the body of the scaffold. So body, and we won't do all the logic here. We'll just reference a function just like we did for the add node. So say show notes, right? I'll create a function for showing the notes. So say widget show notes, and we'll return a future builder, right? And we're using a future builder so we can know if we're getting back the data from the database, if we're loading, if we have an error. But for this tutorial, I'll only focus on whether we have gotten back the data or not. So you can look into future builder if you'd like to know more. So what we'll be getting back is a list, right? A list of nodes model, right? And this function takes a future. Let's start with the future. And the future is basically what are we getting back, right? So for this future, we'll say load nodes. We'll say nodes list, right? Basically, this is the list of nodes that we'll be getting back. This could have been the function load nodes, but since we would have set, we didn't return it, we actually set it to the nodes list. We'll just reference the node list. But this could have been a function, right? We'll say builder, pass a build context so that we can get the context, and we'll be getting a snapshot, right? A snapshot is basically the state that we're currently in, so the state of the data, but we need to specify what type of data we'll be getting. We'll be getting a sync snapshot of type list nodes module, right? And this wasn't spelled correctly, so it's a sync snapshot. Just put our semicolon here for the time being, and we need to return something, right? But first, what we'll do is check if we have the data. So we'll say if snapshot that has data, right? We'll return a list view that builder. And what a list view builder does is that it renders a list, right? A list of things. And what it does is it does this dynamically. And how this works is that first you have to specify how much item that you expect, and what we'll be expecting is the length of the snapshot.data, right? So snapshot.data length, right? So it will know how much space to allocate until. So that's it. And then we'll have the item builder. It provides two properties, the context and the index, right? And the index is how we'll get reference to a specific note that is coming back from this data. So we'll say final. So we'll say final note is equal to snapshot data index, right? And we'll return the UI for this node. So we won't build it here. We'll also extract this out. So we'll say build node item node. And for the time being, if we don't get back the data, what we'll simply do is just return a size box of height 10. We don't, right? This build node function, so widget build node item, and we'll be expecting a nodes model expecting a node of that nodes model, and what will return inkwell, and we're returning inkwell because we'll have an icon, right? An icon. If you see right here, we have this icon, and when we tap on it, what I would like to do is that you should be able to edit the node, right? So inkwell on top, so when you tap on it, we'll have a function, and the function will be edit node. We'll create this function later. For the time being, let's just remove it. So edit node, let's just put that there for the time being. Now this inkwell will have a child of type dismissible, is dismissible. Now a dismissible widget requires a key, a unique key to identify items, right? And we'll do this by saying valid key, and it will be of type int because we'll be using the note ID as the unique ID, right? And a dismissible widget also takes a direction. This is the direction that we'll use to dismiss it. So we'll say dismiss direction dot start to end, right? We'll go with end to start. And what would be like to happen when we're dismissing? So on dismiss, this is when we're deleting something, when we are dismissing whatever child we have inside this dismissible widget, right? So what I'd like to do is call the database handler that delete method. So dismiss direction async, and we wait for the database handler to delete this specific node, right? And it is saying that the parameter child, and of course we'll add our child, so child we'll add for a child card widget. And our card widget will also have a child of list style. So child list style. We'll add a title of text. Note that title. A list style. A list style also have a property called subtitle, and for the subtitle, this is where we'll add a text of note, a description, right? And then we also have a property called trailing, right? And this trailing is going to take an icon of icons dot edit note. Okay, so let's move back to the future builder, right? And this function is now taken care, but it's saying expected that, and now this is saying that the body might complete normally, causing null to be returned. So we'll just need to add an else statement to this if. So else, if we don't get back the data, we'll just return the size box, right? And there it is. That's all the nodes that we have created so far in our database. So as you can see, we can add nodes, we can delete nodes by swiping. So we are going to create our edit node function, pass our node, create the edit node function. So future void edit node model, pass our node. It's going to be async. Okay. So we'll need two text field, right? Basically two text field. One so that they can enter a new name, new title, and a new description, right? And we're going to need the text editing control as well. So final name controller is equal to text editing controller. And the thing is, we want to populate these controllers, the text field, immediately. So what we would do is pass the previous. So when we tap on an item, right, they have a title and a description. So we'll pass the title and the description as data to the show module, right? And we'll collect those there and place them on the text field respectively. So we're going to call this text note, the title. So final this description controller is equal to text editing controller text node description. And just like the add node function, we're going to create a dialog box, right, where they can enter the new title and the new description, right? So we're gonna say final result equal await show dialog, and we're gonna want it to be a boolean as well. We're gonna pass a context, a builder, text context, so curly braces, and let's add our semicolon here since we're returning something, and right here in the curly braces we're going to return build note dialog, right? And we're required to pass a title, so update note, and would pass our name controller, our description controller, and our unpress function. And we have to define our own unpress function. The last time we had defined one for adding note, now we're going to define one for editing note, right? So we're going to await db handler that edit no update. I'm gonna say note model, and our title is going to be name controller that text. Description will be description controller that text, and we're required to pass an ID property as well. That will be note that ID, that is the note that we had clicked on, right? So what you'll do now when we pass this note that ID, you'd find that old ID and replace it with the new information. And just like last time, after we had added an item, we had called the load notes function again. But after we have update, we need to do the same thing. So load notes, right? And we also need to remove the dialog from the screen, right? So navigate to add pop context and set that to true. And just like last time, if everything goes well, we're gonna say if result is equal to true, we're going to show a snap bar, right? So Sqfl messenger of context show snap bar, and we're going to pass our content. Hold on, it already auto generated for me, so text note updated successfully, right? And after all of this, we'd like to set state, so the function, well, the app rebuilds, right? So let's test this out. It should work now. So if I change, edit this, you see it populates the name that we have there. So reading, right? There are 2 books you need to read for this month. Add. And there it is. So our title has changed, our description has changed, and we don't need to change both of them, so it could have just been the first one. Finish the K-drama, and there it is. You can just change one or the other, and we can still add notes. And let's just wrap some random strings. And just now it didn't add it immediately, so that means our app didn't rebuild. So where is the add notes dialog? So after everything else went well, we needed to say set state. So let's try that again. Add notes, Flutter is used to make cross-platform apps. Good. And as you can see, it immediately added to the database and rendered on the screen. So let's go back to the delete function. So let's delete this one. And it was successfully deleted, right? But what I want to do is that when you're deleting it, there is a background, like you see that it's going to delete, right? So let's add that. Give it a container. We're using a container so we can give it a color and a child at the same time. The colors red accent, and we'll give it a child. We want to use the delete icon, so cons icons not delete, no, delete forever, and we want that icon to be of colors that white. Okay. And one more thing, so when we had deleted an icon, so when we had deleted an icon, we also wanted to call the load notes function. Okay, so let's delete this one. And as you can see, when we were deleting it, you saw a red background and the icon delete. So that's it for this tutorial. If you found this tutorial very helpful, please consider subscribing to not miss out on future updates. Until next time, happy coding.